The wind howled through the frozen pines like a wounded beast, driving sheets of snow against Sayla's blue skin. Each step forward required more effort than the last, her legs trembling beneath the weight of exhaustion and the fever that had burned through her body for 3 days now. The tattered remains of her clan markings, once proudly displayed across her shoulders, had been torn away when the elders cast her out. Cursed, they had called her. Unclean, a bringer of misfortune. She stumbled, catching herself against the rough bark of a tree. Her breath came in ragged gasps, visible in the frigid air. Through the swirling white, she could make out the distant lights of the human settlement. They would not welcome her there. Humans feared her kind, the Kyathi, with their azure skin and silver eyes. But dying among enemies seemed preferable to dying alone in the wilderness. The settlement's edge was marked by abandoned structures, victims of the latest raptor raids that plagued this frontier colony. Sayla collapsed against a crumbling stone wall, her strength finally failing. The cold was almost merciful now, numbing the pain of her exile, the memory of her mother turning away as the clan warriors drove her into the wasteland. "Look, Moran, there's someone there." The voice cut through the wind, high and clear. Sayla forced her eyes open to see two small figures approaching through the snow. Human children, identical in every way, from their dark braided hair to their patched winter cloaks. They moved with the cautious curiosity of wild creatures, circling her slowly. "She's blue," one of them said, wonder rather than fear in her voice. "Like the ice flowers that grow by the creek." "She's dying," the other observed with the matter-of-fact tone children often use for terrible truths. "Like Mother did." Sayla tried to speak, to warn them away, but her throat was too dry, her lips cracked and bleeding. The twins exchanged a look, some silent communication passing between them that needed no words. "I'm Lyra," the first one said, kneeling beside Sayla. "This is Moran. You look like you don't have a home." Moran nodded, studying Sayla with eyes too old for her young face. "Our father is strong, but he needs someone who won't be scared of his shadow or our dreams. Mother wasn't scared of anything, but she's gone now." "The raptors took her," Lyra added, her small hand reaching out to touch Sayla's blue skin with fearless curiosity. "Father killed them all, but it was too late. He doesn't smile anymore." Sayla watched through fever-hazed vision as the twins seemed to come to a decision. They positioned themselves on either side of her, their small bodies surprisingly strong as they helped her to her feet. "You need a home," Moran said firmly, "and we need a bride for our father." "He won't like it at first," Lyra warned as they began the slow journey through the snow. "He doesn't like anything at first, but we know things. We see things others don't. We saw you in our dreams," Moran added, "the blue woman who would come through the snow. Mother told us to watch for you before she died." Sayla wanted to protest, to explain that she was cursed, that she would bring nothing but misfortune. But the twins moved with determined purpose, guiding her through paths only they seemed to know, away from the main settlement and toward the rocky cliffs that bordered the colony. The house was built into the stone itself, a structure that seemed to grow from the mountain rather than being imposed upon it. Smoke rose from a chimney carved from rock, and the warm glow of firelight beckoned through thick windows. The twins pushed open the heavy wooden door without hesitation. "Father," Lyra called out, "we brought someone." The man who emerged from the shadows of the house was everything Sayla had been taught to fear about humans. Kalen stood well over 6 feet tall, his broad shoulders and muscled arms bearing the scars of countless battles. A particularly vicious scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw, a souvenir from the raptors that had taken his wife. His dark hair was unkempt, his beard untrimmed, and his gray eyes held a weariness that spoke of grief held too long. He stopped short at the sight of Sayla, his hand instinctively moving to the long knife at his belt. "What have you done?" His voice was a low rumble, directed at his daughters, but his eyes never leaving the Kyathi woman they supported between them. "She needs help," Moran said simply. "She's sick," Lyra added, "and alone, like we were after Mother died, remember? When the settlement wanted to take us away from you, because they said you were too dangerous to raise children." Kalen's jaw clenched, but Sayla saw something flicker in his eyes. Not sympathy exactly, but recognition. He knew what it was to be judged, to be feared. "She's Kyathi," he said, though there was less hostility in the statement than Sayla expected. "So?" Moran challenged. "Mother always said the color of someone's skin doesn't tell you the color of their heart." "Mother said a lot of things," Kalen replied, but he was already moving forward, his large hands surprisingly gentle as he took Sayla's weight from his daughters. She's burning with fever. Lyra, get the healing supplies. Moran, heat water. The twins scattered to their tasks while Kaelin carried Sayla to a cot near the fire. Up close, she could see the pain etched in the lines around his eyes, the way he held himself apart even while tending to her. His hands were careful as he checked her for injuries, noting the torn clan markings with a frown. Exile? He asked quietly. Sayla managed a weak nod. What was your crime? She tried to form words, but Lyra returned with an armload of supply wads, chattering as she moved. The Kayathi exile people for bringing bad luck, father. Their shamans read signs and omens. It's stupid. Mother would have said you make your own luck. Kaelin's hands stilled for a moment. Yes, he said softly, she would have. The next days blurred together for Sayla. The fever raged through her body while the small family tended to her with unexpected dedication. Lyra would sit by her side, telling stories of her mother and the settlement. Moran would bring her water and thin soup, watching with those two knowing eyes. And Kaelin. Kaelin was always there in the background, a silent guardian whose presence felt both protective and wary. It was on the fourth night that the fever finally broke. Sayla woke to find the twins curled against her sides like young foxes, their small bodies warm and trusting. Kaelin sat in a chair nearby, sharpening his knife by the dying firelight. They haven't slept that peacefully since their mother died, he said without looking up. They have nightmares, visions, some would say. They see things that haven't happened yet, sometimes things that might never happen. It frightens people. It doesn't frighten you, Sayla observed, her voice rough from disuse. Very little frightens me anymore, Kaelin replied, finally meeting her eyes. When you've already lost everything that matters, fear becomes irrelevant. But they aren't everything. They're what's left, and I would burn this entire settlement to ash before I let anyone hurt them. The intensity in his voice should have scared her, but instead Sayla found herself understanding. She had been cast out for being different, for being seen as dangerous. This man and his gifted daughters lived on the edge of exile themselves. Why did you take me in? She asked. Kaelin was quiet for a long moment, his gaze shifting to his sleeping daughters. Because they asked me to, because they see something in you that they need, and because, he paused, seeming to struggle with the words, because my wife would have done the same. She had a way of seeing the worth in broken things. Over the following weeks, Sayla recovered her strength and began to understand the rhythm of this strange household. The twins were indeed unusual, often speaking in unison or finishing each other's thoughts. They would sometimes stop mid-play, their eyes going distant as they saw things others couldn't. Once Lyra grabbed Sayla's hand and pulled her away from the woodpile moments before a massive branch fell from the tree above. We see the threads, Moran explained later, drawing patterns in the dirt. The ways things might go, Mother saw them too, but she said we see them clearer. That's why the settlement fears us, Lyra added. They think we're cursed. Or blessed, Moran countered. Mother said it depends on how you look at it. Sayla found herself drawn into their world, teaching them Kayathi hunting techniques while they taught her human customs. She showed them how to read tracks in ways their father hadn't known, how to find edible plants even in winter, how to move silently through the forest like her people did. Kaelin watched these lessons with interest, occasionally joining them. He was a skilled hunter, but his methods were all force and direct confrontation. Sayla's techniques were about understanding, about becoming part of the forest rather than conquering it. Your people know things mine don't, he admitted one evening as they skinned a deer together. The twins were playing nearby, building snow figures that looked suspiciously like a family of four. And yours know things mine don't, Sayla replied. My people would never have survived what you have here on the frontier. We avoid conflict. You meet it head on. Fat lot of good it did me, Kaelin said bitterly, his hand unconsciously moving to the scar on his face. I killed every raptor in that pack, and it brought her back not at all. Sayla was quiet for a moment, watching the twins. But you protected them. You gave them a chance to grow, to become whatever they're meant to be. Among my people, they would be seen as cursed. As I was, here with you, they're just children who see a little more than others. Kaelin looked at her then, really looked at her, and Sayla felt something shift between them. It wasn't attraction, not yet, but understanding. recognition of a kindred spirit who had also been marked by loss and survived it. The peace was shattered 3 weeks later. Sayla woke to the sound of scratching on the roof, a sound that made every nerve in her body scream danger. She rolled from her cot, grabbing the spear Kalen had given her, where, just as the first raptor crashed through the window, the creature was a nightmare of scales and claws, its blue-furred hide rippling with muscle. These weren't the normal raptors that occasionally troubled the settlement. These were pack hunters, intelligent and coordinated, the same kind that had killed Kalen's wife. Girls! Kalen's roar shook the house as he burst from his room, sword already in hand. But the twins were already moving, not away from danger but together, their small hands clasped as they pressed against the wall. 3 more coming, Lyra said calmly, from the north side. Father, duck! Moran screamed. Kalen dropped without hesitation as a second raptor sailed over his head. Sayla's spear caught it mid-leap, the Kyathi forge point piercing its hide where human weapons would have glanced off. She wrenched the spear free and spun, using techniques her people had developed over generations of living alongside these predators. You know how to fight them, Kalen said with surprise as they stood back to back. My people live in their territory, Sayla replied, tracking the movement in the darkness outside. We learned or we died. The next wave came all at once. 3 raptors crashed through different entry points, trying to divide the defenders. But the twins were calling out positions before the creatures even moved, their gift giving the fighters precious seconds of warning. Sayla found herself protecting the girls while Kalen raged through the house like a force of nature. She watched him fight and understood why the settlement feared him. There was something primal in the way he moved, something that spoke of a man who had crossed a line and never looked back. But there was also precision, control. He fought not with blind rage, but with the calculated fury of a father protecting his young. One raptor got past him, lunging for the twins. Sayla intercepted it, but its claws raked across her shoulder, sending her spinning. The creature advanced on the girls, who stood their ground with unnatural calm. Now, they said in unison. Kalen's sword took the creature's head off just as Sayla's spear pierced its heart. They had struck from different angles at the exact moment the twins had foreseen. The last raptor, the pack leader, was larger than the others. It circled them warily, intelligent enough to recognize the danger. This was the one, Sayla realized. The scarred creature that had led the pack that killed Kalen's wife. She could see it in the way man and beast regarded each other, predator to predator. Take the girls and go, Kalen said quietly. No, Sayla replied, stepping beside him. We do this together. The raptor charged with a sound like thunder. Kalen met it head-on while Sayla danced around its flank. The twins called out warnings, their voices cutting through the chaos. The battle raged through the house, furniture splintering, walls cracking under the impact. It was Moran who saw the opening. Mother's knife, she screamed. The one in the chest. Kalen's eyes widened. He dove for an old chest in the corner, pulling out a blade Sayla had never seen him touch. It was beautiful, clearly crafted with love, its handle worn from use. His wife's weapon. The raptor, sensing his distraction, lunged. Sayla threw herself between them, her spear snapping under the creature's weight. Its jaws closed on her arm, teeth piercing blue skin. She screamed, but it held on, giving Kalen the moment he needed. The knife found the soft spot under the raptor's jaw, the one place its scales didn't protect. The creature's eyes widened in something almost like surprise before it collapsed, nearly taking Sayla down with it. Sayla! The twins were on her immediately, their small hands checking her injuries. Kalen knelt beside them, his rough hands surprisingly gentle as he examined her wounded arm. Why be shy? He asked, his voice thick with emotion. Why would you do that? Because they need you, Sayla gasped through the pain. Both of them. And because, she paused, meeting his eyes, because broken things can still protect what matters. The sound of approaching voices interrupted them. Half the settlement had heard the battle and come to investigate. They burst through the broken door, weapons drawn, only to stop short at the scene before them. Dead raptors littered the house, blue blood pooling on the floor. And at the center, a human and a Kyathi, both bloodied but alive, with 2 small girls between them. Elder Marcus, the settlement's leader, pushed through the crowd. His face was grim as he took in the scene, his gaze lingering on Sayla. The Kyathi brought them here, someone whispered, just like her kind brought a curse to her own people. She's a danger, another voice added. Who knows what else she'll bring? Marcus nodded slowly. Kalen, you know the settlement's laws. We've tolerated your unusual household because of your service, but this attack proves the danger. The Kayathi must go. Kalen stood slowly and Selah saw the change come over him. This was the man the settlement truly feared, the one who had walked out of the wilderness carrying his dead wife and covered in the blood of an entire raptor pack. She saved my daughters, he said, his voice deadly quiet. The attack might not have come at all if not for her presence, Marcus countered. The Kayathi draw misfortune. Her own people knew this. Why do you think she was exiled? I was exiled, Selah said, struggling to stand despite her injuries. Because I questioned why we blamed individuals for random misfortune. Because I suggested that perhaps our fears created the very disasters we sought to avoid. And because when the chief's son died from winter fever, they needed someone to blame. You see, Marcus said to the crowd, she brings discord even in her words. Kalen, be reasonable. Think of your daughters. I am, Kalen replied. He moved to stand beside Selah, and the twins immediately flanked them both. I'm thinking of what my wife would say if she saw me turn away someone who bled for our children. I'm thinking of what kind of father I'd be if I taught them that fear matters more than honor. Then you choose her over the settlement, Marcus demanded. Before Kalen could answer, Lyra stepped forward. We choose her, she said clearly. Moran and I, we saw her coming in our dreams. Mother showed us. Mother's dead, someone called out. Children's fantasies aren't... Mother knew she would die, Moran interrupted, her young voice cutting through the crowd's murmurs. She saw it the same way we see things, and she saw Selah too. The blue woman who would come through the snow, who would stand where she stood, who would choose to bleed for children, not her own. The crowd shifted uneasily. Everyone knew about the twins' gift, even if they preferred not to acknowledge it directly. If she goes, Lyra said firmly, we go with her. You're children, Marcus said dismissively. You don't get to make such choices. Then I make it for them, Kalen said, his hand moving to his sword. Anyone who wants to force her out goes through me. And unlike with the raptors, I won't stop when the threat is dead. I'll keep going until the message is clear. The threat hung in the air like a blade. Everyone knew Kalen's reputation, knew what he was capable of when pushed too far. But Marcus wasn't ready to back down. You would turn against your own kind for this creature? She's not a creature, Moran said quietly. She's going to be our mother. The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. Even Selah looked startled, but the twins seemed utterly certain. We've seen it, Lyra added. Many times, different paths, different ways, but always the same. She stays, she becomes family, and she helps save the settlement when the Great Pack comes in the spring. What Great Pack? Marcus demanded. The twins looked at each other, then back at the elder. The one drawn by the blood spilled tonight, hundreds of them. Without her knowledge of their ways, without what she teaches us all, the settlement burns. Children's fantasies, Marcus repeated, but with less conviction. Like when they warned about the flood last spring, Kalen asked. Or when they knew the supply convoy would be attacked and we were able to send reinforcements. How many times do they need to be right before you listen? The crowd was wavering now, fear of the unknown warring with the practical knowledge that the twins' visions had saved lives before. It was Selah who broke the stalemate. She stepped forward, wincing at the pain in her arm, and addressed the crowd directly. I understand your fear, she said. I lived with the same fear among my own people, always looking for someone to blame when things went wrong, always believing that exile or punishment would prevent disaster. But disaster comes anyway, doesn't it? The raptors didn't attack because of me. They attacked because this is their territory too, and we're all invaders here. She gestured to the dead creatures. But look what we did together. Human strength and Kayathi knowledge. Your directness in my understanding of these creatures. We're stronger together than apart. Pretty words, Marcus said, but I'll make you a deal, Selah interrupted. Let me stay through spring. Let me teach you what I know about surviving alongside the raptors instead of just fighting them. If the Great Pack comes as the twins have seen, you'll need that knowledge. If I bring more harm than help, I'll leave willingly. And if you succeed, Marcus asked, then you stop fearing what's different and start learning from it, Kalen said. Like my wife always said we should. The mention of Kalen's wife carried weight. She had been beloved in the settlement, a voice of reason and compassion. Marcus looked between the family, for that's what they were already becoming, and finally nodded. Through spring, he agreed. But if there's any sign of the curse you carry, there is no curse, Moran said with the certainty only a child could muster. There's only fear, and fear is a choice. The crowd dispersed slowly, leaving the strange family to tend their wounds and repair their home. As Selah sat while Kaylin carefully cleaned and bound her injured arm, she watched the twins already beginning to clean up the damage with the resilience of children who had faced too much too young. They called you mother, Kaylin said quietly. They did, Selah agreed, not sure what else to say. My wife would have liked you, he continued, his hands gentle on her wounds. She always said the settlement needed to open its mind, to learn from others instead of fearing them. She would have welcomed you without hesitation. She sounds like she was remarkable. She was, Kaylin agreed, and she was right about many things, including, apparently, about you coming. Selah looked at him in surprise. You believe the twins? I've learned to, he said simply. They're rarely wrong about the important things. And if they say you're meant to be here, to be part of this, then I believe them. Even the part about becoming their mother, Kaylin's hands stilled on her bandages, that would be your choice and mine. The girls can see possibilities, not certainties. Some paths require choosing. Over the following weeks, as winter deepened, Selah found herself truly becoming part of the household. She taught the twins more about tracking and forestcraft, but also found herself braiding their hair in the morning, mending their clothes, telling them stories of her people at bedtime. They absorbed everything with an eagerness that reminded her why she had questioned her people's rigid traditions in the first place. Children didn't see difference as something to fear unless taught to do so. With Kaylin, things were more complex. They worked together with increasing smoothness, hunting and protecting the homestead. She learned his patterns, the way he favored his left side since an old injury, the way his eyes went distant when something reminded him of his wife. He learned hers too, how she tested the wind before every decision, how she could read the forest like others read books. One evening, as they sat by the fire after the twins had gone to bed, Kaylin spoke unexpectedly. They laugh again, he said. I hadn't realized how long it had been since I heard them truly laugh until you brought it back. Children are resilient, Selah replied. They just need to feel safe enough to show it. You make them feel safe, he said, looking at her directly. You make all of us feel safer. I haven't felt that since, he trailed off. Since your wife died, Selah finished gently. Since before that, Kaylin admitted. The last months were hard. She was sick for a long time before the raptors came. I think she went out to face them on purpose, to die as a warrior rather than waste away. Selah moved closer, not touching but offering presence. My mother was a warrior too, she said. Among the Kayati, that means something different than here. It means one who maintains harmony, who keeps the balance. But when the balance was threatened, she could fight like the storm itself. She taught me that strength isn't just in the blade, but in knowing when to use it. And when is that? When you have something worth protecting, Selah replied, her silver eyes meeting his gray ones. When standing aside would cost more than standing firm. Is that why you stood between me and the raptor? Yes, she said simply. And is that why you stay, even though the settlement barely tolerates you? Selah considered the question. At first I stayed because I had nowhere else to go. Then I stayed because the twins needed something I could give. Now, she paused, choosing her words carefully. Now I stay because this feels like home. Because you three feel like family. Because leaving would tear something in me that just finished healing. Kaylin reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. His palm was rough with calluses, warm against her blue skin. The twins aren't the only ones who see you as family, he said quietly. Before Selah could respond, Moran's voice drifted from the doorway. Finally, Lyra, you owe me your dessert tomorrow. I told you they'd figure it out before the spring festival. We're supposed to be asleep, Lyra's voice added with a giggle. You're supposed to be many things, Kaylin said with mock sternness. Come here, you two spies. The twins ran over, throwing themselves at both adults with abandon. As they settled into a piles by the fire, Selah felt something she hadn't experienced since before her exile, belonging. The rest of winter passed in a blur of preparation. Selah worked with the settlement's hunters, teaching them Kayathi techniques for avoiding raptor territories and reading their signs. There was resistance at first, but as her methods proved effective, more people began to listen. She showed them how to use sound to deter hunting packs, how to identify which trails the creatures used during different seasons, how to recognize the difference between a territorial display and a true attack. With the twins, she discovered they could sense the raptor's presence in ways that complemented her physical tracking. Together, they created an early warning system that gave the settlement precious time to prepare for potential attacks. And with Kaylin, something deeper grew. It wasn't the passionate romance of youth, but something stronger. A partnership built on mutual respect, shared purpose, and the gradual intertwining of two damaged souls who had found in each other a reason to heal. The first time he kissed her was after a successful hunt. They had worked in perfect synchronization to bring down an elk, and as they stood over their kill, breathless and alive with triumph, he had simply pulled her close and pressed his lips to hers. It was brief, almost hesitant, but when she responded, she felt him smile against her mouth. "The twins will be insufferable," he murmured. "They already are," she replied, and kissed him again. Spring came late that year, and with it came the proof of the twins' vision. The great pack arrived just as the snow began to melt, hundreds of raptors driven from their northern territories by something the scouts couldn't identify. They surrounded the settlement like a living sea of scales and claws, but the settlement was ready. Selah had spent months preparing them for this possibility, teaching them not just to fight but to understand. The raptors weren't evil, just displaced and hungry. Instead of meeting them with violence, the settlement used the techniques Selah had taught them. Controlled fires to create barriers, specific sounds that the raptors associated with danger, and most importantly, providing alternative food sources to draw them away from the settlement itself. It took 3 days of constant vigilance, but not a single human life was lost. The raptors, finding easier prey in the fish runs Selah had predicted would coincide with their arrival, gradually dispersed. Marcus himself came to the house afterward, his weathered face showing a mixture of gratitude and humility. "I was wrong," he said simply. "About you, about what you bring. You saved us all." "We saved ourselves," Selah corrected, "together. That's what community means." "Yes," Marcus agreed, "it is. Which is why I'm here to formally recognize your place in this settlement. If you'll have us, after how we treated you." Selah looked at Kaylin, who nodded, then at the twins, who were practically vibrating with excitement. "I will," she said. "This is my home now." The spring festival that year was unlike any before. For the first time, Kayathi traditions were woven into the celebration. Selah taught the children her people's dances, the ones that mimicked the movement of the forest. She showed the women how to prepare certain plants that could cure infections humans had thought untreatable. And she stood with Kaylin before the entire settlement as Marcus performed a binding ceremony, formally recognizing their union. The twins stood with them, Lyra holding the rings they had made from raptor scales, a symbol of beauty from danger, while Moran recited the words her visions had shown her, words in both human and Kathi tongues that spoke of unity in difference. That night, as the settlement celebrated below, the new family stood on the cliff overlooking their home. Kaylin's arm was around Sila's waist, the twins leaning against them both, and for the first time since their individual tragedies, they all felt whole. "What do you see now?" Selah asked the twins. "What does the future hold?" The girls looked at each other, their special communication flowing between them, then smiled. "A brother," they said in unison, "one who will bridge both worlds." Kaylin and Selah exchanged glances, and he pulled her closer. "Well," he said with a smile that transformed his scarred face, "we'd better get started on that future then." Summer brought its own challenges. The settlement, now more accepting of Sayila, began to truly integrate her knowledge with their own. She worked with the healers, sharing Kayathi remedies that used the local flora in ways humans hadn't discovered. Some were skeptical until she cured a child's persistent fever with a tea made from the blue moss that grew on the northern cliffs. With Kaylin, she explored deeper into the wild territories, mapping raptor nesting grounds and migration patterns. These expeditions were dangerous but necessary, and they moved together like two parts of the same whole. He would spot danger from a distance while she would read the subtle signs of recent passage. Together, they were able to create detailed maps that would help the settlement avoid conflicts for generations. On one such expedition, they encountered something unexpected. A young Kayathi male, wounded and delirious, hiding in a cave system. Selah recognized him immediately. Theron, from her former clan. "Selah?" he gasped, his silver eyes wide with disbelief. You're alive, but they said the curse took you, that you died in the wasteland. The only curse was fear, Sayla replied, helping Kalen move the wounded youth to safer ground. What happened to you? The clan, it's gone, Theron whispered. The shamans were wrong about everything. When they exiled you, others began to question. There was conflict, division. Then the raptors came, a pack larger than any we'd seen. Without unity, we couldn't defend ourselves. I might be all that's left. Sayla felt a complex mix of emotions. Sorrow for the loss, anger at the waste of it, but also a grim vindication. The curse they had feared so much had been their fear itself. They brought Theron back to the settlement, where his presence caused a new stir. One Kyathi had been remarkable enough. Two suggested the possibility of more permanent integration. Some of the younger settlers, those who had seen Sayla's value most clearly, began to speak of seeking out other Kyathi survivors, of creating a truly mixed community. Theron's recovery was slow, and he struggled to accept the human settlement's ways. But the twins, with their usual prescience, took him under their wing. He's important, Moran told Sayla one evening. Not for us, but for what comes next. What comes next? Sayla asked. Others will come, Lyra explained. Humans and Kyathi both, fleeing their own fears and conflicts. This place will become something new, something neither fully human nor fully Kyathi. A bridge, Moran added, like our brother will be. The mention of the future child made Sayla place a hand on her still flat stomach. She hadn't told anyone yet, not even Kalen, but somehow she wasn't surprised the twins knew. That evening, as she and Kalen sat watching the sunset, she took his hand and placed it on her belly. The twins' vision is coming true, she said softly. The joy that spread across his face was like dawn breaking. He pulled her close, burying his face in her neck, and she felt him tremble with emotion. A child, he whispered. Our child. A bridge between worlds, Sayla confirmed. Born of human and Kyathi, belonging fully to both and neither. He'll face challenges, Kalen said, already protective. He'll face them with the strength of both peoples, Sayla replied. And with sisters who see the future, and parents who've already broken the boundaries others said couldn't be crossed. The pregnancy progressed through autumn, and with it came changes to the settlement. More refugees arrived, both human and Kyathi, drawn by rumors of a place where the two races lived together. Not all attempts at integration were successful, but gradually a new normal emerged. Sayla found herself at the center of this transformation, translating not just languages but cultures. She mediated disputes, facilitated partnerships, and slowly helped weave a new kind of community. The twins were her constant helpers, their gift allowing them to see which connections would strengthen and which would fracture. Theron recovered from his injuries, became an unexpected ally. His experience with the failure of rigid tradition made him a powerful voice for adaptation. He and several human settlers formed a new type of scouting unit, combining both races' strengths to patrol the expanding territory. Winter came again, but this time Sayla met it not as an exile, but as a cornerstone of the community. Her belly was round with child, and Kalen had become almost comically protective, despite her protests that Kyathi women worked until the day they gave birth. You're not just Kyathi, he would say. You're my wife and you're carrying our child. You'll rest if I have to tie you to the bed. You could try, she would reply with a smile that promised he would regret the attempt. The twins were beside themselves with excitement about their coming brother. They had already named him KL, a combination of both parents' names, and spent hours telling Sayla's belly about all the things they would teach him. We'll show him how to see the threads, Lyra would whisper. And how to read the forest, Moran would add. How to be both human and Kyathi, they would say together. The birth came during a blizzard, which the twins claimed was auspicious. Born in the storm, they said, like you came to us, Sayla. The labor was long and difficult, complicated by the biological differences between the races. The human midwife and a Kyathi healer worked together, their combined knowledge necessary to safely deliver the child. When Kyle finally arrived, his cry cutting through the howling wind outside, the entire house seemed to hold its breath. He was perfect, skin a pale purple that would likely darken to a deeper blue as he aged on, eyes that held flecks of both silver and gray, and a grip that suggested he had inherited both parents' strength. He's beautiful, Kalen whispered, tears streaming down his scarred face as he held his son for the first time. He's hope, Sayla replied, exhausted but radiant, living proof that our peoples can be one. The twins, allowed in once Selah was recovered enough, looked at their brother with the solemnity of those witnessing destiny. "He'll change everything," Moran said quietly. "Everything needs changing," Lyra replied. As winter gave way to spring once more, Kael grew with remarkable speed, showing traits from both his heritages. He had the Kayati ability to sense the moods of animals, but the human drive to explore and challenge. The settlement's children, both human and Kayati, were fascinated by him, this living symbol of their integrated future. One day, as Silas sat nursing Kael while watching Kaelin teach the twins advanced hunting techniques, Marcus approached. The elder had aged visibly in the past year, the challenges of leading a changing community wearing on him. "I've been thinking," he said, settling beside her with the careful movements of old bones, "about leadership, about the future. This settlement needs someone who represents what we're becoming, not what we were." Selah looked at him sharply. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that when I step down next winter, I'll be recommending you and Kaelin as joint leaders. Human and Kyathi working together. It's what this place needs." "The people won't accept." "They already have," Marcus interrupted. "You saved us from the Great Pack. You've healed our sick, taught us to live with the land instead of against it. You've shown us a better way. In him," he nodded toward Kaelin, "he's shown that strength can protect without destroying, that a warrior can also be a builder." "We never sought leadership," Selah said. "The best leaders never do," Marcus replied with a sad smile. "My own ambition blinded me to what this settlement needed. You two see clearly because you're looking at the future, not the past." That evening, Selah shared Marcus's words with Kaelin. He was quiet for a long time, sharpening his knife, a nervous habit she'd learned to recognize. "Could we do it?" he finally asked. "Lead them? Together?" "Yes," Selah said with certainty. "We're just a bitter human warrior and an exiled Kyathi. Together, we're something new." "The twins would love it," he said with a wry smile. "They've probably already seen it." As if summoned, Lyra and Moran appeared in the doorway, Kael toddling between them on unsteady legs. "We have," Moran confirmed cheerfully. "You'll be good at it." "There will be challenges," Lyra added more seriously. "People will come who don't want integration, both human and Kyathi purists. There will be conflict." "But Kael will help," Moran said, scooping up her baby brother. "When they see him, see what's possible, most will understand." "And those who don't?" Kaelin asked. The twins exchanged one of their looks. "They'll leave," they said together, "or learn." Summer brought the first real test of the integrated settlement. A band of human supremacists arrived, fleeing conflicts in the eastern colonies, but bringing their poisonous ideology with them. They saw the Kyathi as lesser beings, the mixed children as abominations. The confrontation came to a head when one of them struck a Kyathi child in the market. Before anyone could react, Kaelin was there, his hand around the man's throat. "Touch another child, any child, and I'll feed you to the raptors piece by piece," he growled. "You defend these creatures over your own kind?" the man gasped. "I defend my community," Kaelin replied. "All of it. And you're not part of it." The supremacists left that night, but not before trying to burn down the integrated school that had been built. Theron and his mixed patrol caught them in the act, and the sight of humans and Kyathi working together to save the building seemed to break something in the attackers' worldview. They fled into the wilderness and were never seen again. "They'll be back," Selah said that night as she surveyed the damage. "Maybe not them specifically, but others like them." "Then we'll be ready," Kaelin replied, his arm around her as Kael slept against his chest. "We've faced worse and survived." Autumn arrived with unexpected visitors, a delegation from Selah's former clan, or what remained of it. They stood at the settlement's gates, proud but clearly desperate. Their leader, an elderly female named Saith, approached Selah with visible reluctance. "We seek sanctuary," she said without preamble. "The old ways have failed us. We are dying." Selah studied the woman who had been one of voices calling for her exile. "And you come to the cursed one for help?" "We come to the one who survived," Saith replied, her pride cracking. "Who found a new way. We were wrong. It would have been easy to turn them away, to let them face the consequences of their fear and rigid tradition. But Selah looked at the hungry children in the group, at the wounded and elderly, and made her choice. You may stay, she said, but you follow our laws. Human and Kayati are equal here. Integration is not just tolerated, but expected. Can you accept that? Scythe looked at Kale, playing at Sayla's feet with his blue-purple skin and mixed features, and something shifted in her expression. We can learn, she said quietly. The integration of the clan refugees was difficult, but not impossible. The twins, as always, were instrumental in identifying which members would adapt and which would cause problems. Those who couldn't accept the new way were given supplies and directions to other Kayati settlements. But most stayed, slowly learning that their fears had been chains of their own making. Winter came gently that year, and with it came Marcus's formal stepping down. The ceremony was held in the expanded community hall, with humans and Kathy packed together to witness the transition. Marcus spoke of the journey from fear to acceptance, from isolation to integration. I led you as far as my vision could see, he said. But these two see further. They see not just what we are, but what we can become. When Kalen and Sayla stood to accept the leadership roles, Kale toddled forward, escaping from the twins' grasp to cling to his parents' legs. The sight of the mixed family, scarred human warrior, exiled Kathy woman, gifted human twins, and bridge child, standing together seemed to crystallize something for the community. The applause started slowly, then built to a roar that shook the rafters. Years passed. The settlement grew into a true town, then a small city. The integration model they had developed became famous throughout the frontier, drawing scholars and diplomats from both races. Kyle grew into a young man who moved between both worlds with an ease that amazed everyone, becoming a natural mediator and leader in his own right. The twins' gifts evolved as they aged, allowing them to see not just immediate futures, but generational patterns. They became the settlement's strategic advisors, helping plan for challenges decades in advance. And Kalen and Sila grew into their roles as leaders, their partnership becoming legendary. The scarred human warrior and the exiled Kiathi woman who had found each other in loss and built something unprecedented from their pain. One evening, as they sat on the same cliff where they had once stood as a newly formed family, now watching their grandchildren play, for the twins had both married and had children of their own, and Kyle had partnered with another mixed blood, Sayla leaned against Kalen's shoulder. Did you ever imagine this, she asked? When the twins first brought me to you, half dead in the snow? No, he admitted, his arm pulling her closer. I thought I'd lost the ability to imagine anything good. But you brought it back. You brought everything back. We brought it back, she corrected, together. Below them the city spread out, its lights a mixture of human torches and Kayathi bioluminescent lamps, a physical representation of the integration they had achieved. Children of both races played together in the streets, their laughter carrying on the wind. The twins were right, Kalen said. You were meant to come through that snow. And you were meant to take me in, Sayla replied, despite everything telling you not to. The best decisions often go against what we're told, he said, pressing a kiss to her still dark hair, now streaked with silver. Your exile, my isolation, the twins' strangeness, they all became strengths when we stopped seeing them as weaknesses. A small hand tugged at Sayla's sleeve. One of their grandchildren, a girl with Kyle's purple skin but the twins' knowing eyes, looked up at them. Grandmother, tell us the story again. About how you came through the snow. Sayla smiled, pulling the child onto her lap. Other grandchildren, hearing the promise of a story, came running. Soon they were surrounded by young faces, human and Kayathi, and everything in between. It was the coldest winter anyone could remember, Sayla began, her voice taking on the cadence of a storyteller. And I was dying, cast out by my own people for the crime of asking questions. As she told the story, Kalen's hand found hers, their fingers intertwining, his pale and scarred, hers blue and graceful. Around them, their legacy played and laughed and lived without fear of difference. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of snow, and Sila remembered that first blizzard, when two small girls had seen not a dangerous exile but a future mother, not a burst but a blessing disguised as hardship. And then, she continued, squeezing Kalen's hand, two brave little girls appeared through the snow and said the words that changed everything. You need a home, and we need a bride for our father. The children giggled at this part, as they always did, but Sayla and Kalen exchanged a look over their heads, a look that held years of shared struggle and triumph, of building something from nothing, of choosing love over fear again and again. As the stars came out, brilliant in the clear sky, Selah finished the story as she always did. And so the exile found a home, the warrior found peace, the gifted children found acceptance, and together they built a world where no one would ever be cast out for being different again. Is it true? One of the youngest children asked. All of it. Every word, Kalen rumbled, his deep voice carrying absolute certainty. And the best part is the story isn't over. You're all part of it now, every one of you. You're the next chapter. Later that night, after the grandchildren had been collected by their parents and the house had grown quiet, Selah and Kalen stood together in their bedroom, looking out at the city they had helped build. Do you ever regret it? Kalen asked suddenly. Coming here, choosing this life. You could have found another Kayathi settlement, lived among your own kind. Selah turned to face him, her silver eyes still bright despite the years. My own kind, she repeated softly. Do you know what I learned, Kalen? My kind isn't determined by the color of my skin or the traditions of my birth. My kind are those who choose courage over fear, who build bridges instead of walls, who see difference as strength. She reached up to trace the old scar on his face, the one from the raptors that had taken his first wife. My kind are those who can lose everything and still choose to love again. You are my kind. The twins, KL, this entire mixed, messy, beautiful community, they are my kind. He caught her hand, pressing it to his lips. You saved us all, you know. Not just from the raptors or the conflicts, but from ourselves. From what we might have become if we'd stayed separate, afraid. We saved each other, Selah corrected, as she always did. That's what family does. A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Kale entered, his purple skin almost glowing in the moonlight. Behind him were the twins, now middle-aged but still moving with that uncanny synchronization. There's something you should know, Moran said. We've seen something coming, Lyra added. Selah and Kalen exchanged glances. Even after all these years, the twins' visions could still surprise them. What kind of something? Kalen asked. Ships, Kale said, taking over the explanation. From the homeworlds, both human and Kathy. They've heard about us, about what we've built here. They're coming to see if it's real. And if it is? Selah asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. They want to replicate it, Moran said. Everywhere. The integration model, the cooperation. They want to end the separation between the races. It won't be easy, Lyra warned. There will be those on both sides who resist, but the seeds we've planted here will spread. Selah felt Kalen's arm come around her, solid and reassuring as always. She looked at her children, the twins who had saved her with their innocent wisdom, and Kale who embodied the future they had dared to imagine. Then we'll teach them, she said simply, just as we learned ourselves. One person, one family, one community at a time. Together, Kalen added, the word that had become their touchstone. Together, they all echoed. As the family stood there, 4 generations of integration and hope, Selah thought back to that day in the snow when she had been ready to die. The twins had been right. She had needed a home. But more than that, she had needed a purpose, a reason to fight through the cold and the rejection and the fear. She had found all of that and more. She had found love where she expected hostility, family where she expected isolation, and strength where she expected only survival. The scars remained, Kalen's physical ones, her emotional ones from exile, the community's collective ones from years of fear and separation. But scars, she had learned, were just proof of healing, evidence that what was broken could be mended. The next morning brought the first of the ships, their landing shaking the entire valley. Representatives from both homeworlds emerged, their faces showing the same mixture of skepticism and hope that Selah remembered from her early days in the settlement. She stood with her family to greet them, no longer the dying exile in the snow, but a leader, a bridge builder, a living testament to the power of integration. Welcome, she said in both languages. Let us show you what's possible when fear gives way to understanding. As the delegates followed them into the city, children ran alongside, human, Kayathi, and mixed, their laughter a symphony of the future. The market squares buzzed with integrated life. The schools taught combined curriculums. The defense forces trained together. One of the Kayathi delegates, his blue skin marked with the traditional patterns of the Orthodox clans, stopped in front of a mixed family. This is real? He asked, disbelief clear in his voice. They truly live as equals? Not just as equals, Kale said, stepping forward with the confidence of one who had never known a segregated world. As family, as community, as one people with many faces. The human delegate, a woman with the bearing of military command, watched a group of children playing a game that combined human and Kathy traditions. How? She asked simply. It was Kalen who answered, his scarred face thoughtful. By choosing to see strength where others saw weakness. By letting our children teach us to be better. By bleeding for each other until the color of that blood didn't matter anymore. The tours continued for days, the delegates observing every aspect of the integrated society. They sat in on council meetings where human and Kathy voices carried equal weight. They watched mixed couples marry with blessings from both traditions. They saw elderly humans being cared for by young Kathy, and Kathy children being taught by human elders. But it was a simple moment that seemed to break through their remaining doubts. One evening, as the delegates sat in the community hall, a young mixed child fell and scraped her knee. Without hesitation, both human and Kayathi adults rushed to help, their concern identical, their comfort equally given and received. I understand now, the Kayathi delegate said quietly. It's not about tolerance or even acceptance. It's about seeing no difference at all in what matters most. The differences remain, Selah corrected gently. We don't erase them, we celebrate them, we learn from them. We make them sources of strength rather than division. The human delegate nodded slowly. This will change everything. There will be resistance, violence perhaps. There was here too, Kalen said, but we survived it, and what we built proved stronger than what we left behind. When the delegates finally departed, they carried with them not just reports and observations, but something more powerful. Hope. Hope that the ancient divisions could be healed, that fear could be overcome, that two races could become one people while maintaining their unique strengths. As the ships disappeared into the sky, Selah stood once again on the cliff overlook, her family around her. The twins, their gift having shown them the ripples spreading from this moment, smiled with satisfaction. Kael, ever the bridge, was already planning for the influx of visitors and settlers that would come. And Kalen, her rock, her unexpected love, stood solid beside her. It's not ending, Moran said softly. What we started, it's finally beginning. The real work starts now, Lyra agreed, but the foundation is strong. Selah thought of all the moments that had led to this. The exile, the snow, the twins' innocent invitation, the first raptor attack, the first kiss, the first mixed child born, the first integrated wedding, the first time someone forgot to notice if their neighbor was human or Kayathi. Each moment had been a choice to trust over fear, to build over destroy, to unite over divide. Mother, Kale said, using the title that still sometimes surprised her with its sweetness, the council wants to build a monument to commemorate the founding of the integrated city. They want to know what it should say. Selah looked at her son, this living monument to possibility. Then at the twins who had seen the future and made it real. Then at Kalen, who had chosen love over loss. Tell them to inscribe it with what the twins said to me that first day, she said. You need a home and we need a bride for our father. But add this, from this simple truth, a new world was born. Not human, not Kayathi, but something greater. A people united by choice rather than divided by chance. As the sun set over their integrated city, painting the sky in shades of purple that matched Kael's skin, Selah allowed herself a moment of complete satisfaction. She had come through the snow expecting death and had found instead a life richer than anything her former clan could have imagined. The curse they had feared had been a gift. The exile had been a journey home. The stranger had become the heart of a new world. And it had all started with two little girls who saw not with their eyes, but with their hearts, who recognized that sometimes the family you choose is stronger than the family you're born to, and that love, real love, sees no color but the content of one's character. The night deepened, stars emerging in patterns both human and Kayathi astronomers had named differently, but now studied together. In the city below, the evening rituals of both cultures blended into something new, something that belonged to neither tradition and both. Ready to go home? Kalen asked, his hand finding hers as naturally as breathing. I am home, Selah replied, encompassing with a gesture not just the house, but the city, the family, the life they had built from the ashes of their separate griefs. I've been home since the moment your daughters decided I belonged here. Our daughters, he corrected gently, And even after all these years, the word ours still sent warmth through her chest. As they walked back to the house, their children and grandchildren falling into step around them, Selah reflected on the long journey from that desperate crawl through the blizzard to this moment of absolute belonging. Every scar had been worth it. Every moment of doubt, every fight for acceptance, every choice to stay when leaving would have been easier. All of it had led to this, a world where no child would grow up feeling less than others because of their skin color or their gifts, where strength was measured in unity rather than division, where the impossible had become everyday reality. The house welcomed them with warmth and light, the voices of family filling spaces that had once echoed with loneliness. As Sila helped prepare the evening meal alongside her daughters and granddaughters, both human and Kathy hands working in harmony, she smiled at the simple beauty of it. This was what the fearful on both sides couldn't understand. That integration wasn't about losing one's identity, but about expanding it. Not about becoming less, but about becoming more. Every tradition shared was a tradition enriched. Every barrier broken was a strength gained. Grandmother, one of the youngest grandchildren, tugged at her sleeve. Will you teach us the water dance? The Kathy one? Only if your grandfather teaches you the human fire dance to go with it, Selah replied, catching Kalen's eye across the room. He nodded, that rare smile transforming his scarred face. Tomorrow, he promised, we'll teach you both, and you can create something new from them. Like you did, the child said with the simple wisdom of innocence. Like we did, Selah agreed, pulling the child close. As the evening deepened into night and the family gradually dispersed to their own homes, Selah and Kalen found themselves alone by the fire, as they had been that night so many years ago when she first admitted this felt like home. The delegates will spread the word, Kalen said. There will be challenges we haven't even imagined yet. We'll face them, Selah replied with certainty, the same way we faced everything else. Together, they said in unison, then laughed at how they had picked up the twins' habit over the years. A soft sound from the doorway made them turn. The twins stood there, older now, but still emanating that uncanny synchronization, their eyes holding that distant look that meant they were seeing beyond the present. One more thing, Moran said softly. We've been waiting for the right time to tell you, Lyra added. Tell us what? Selah asked, though something in her already knew. About the last vision, they said together, the one we've seen since that first day in the snow. They moved into the room, sitting across from their parents with the solemnity of prophets delivering a final revelation. This city, this integration, it's not the end goal, Moran began. It's the seed. In 100 years, there won't be human and Kyathi anymore, Lyra continued, not as separate races. There will be something new, something stronger. Our people, they said in unison, united not by conquest or treaty, but by love, by choice, by the simple recognition that we're stronger together than apart. And it started here, Moran said, taking Selah's hand. With you, Lyra added, taking Kalen's. With a woman who needed a home and a man who needed to heal, they continued together. With children who saw beyond the surface to the heart beneath. With a choice to trust instead of fear. Selah felt tears on her cheeks, Kalen's hand tightening around hers. Thank you, she whispered to the twins, for seeing me that day, for bringing me home. You brought yourself home, Moran corrected gently. You chose to follow two strange children into the unknown. You chose to stay when it got hard. You chose to fight for us, to bleed for us, to become one of us and make us something more. You both did, Lyra added, looking at her father. You chose to see past the color of her skin to the warrior beneath. You chose to love again when loss had nearly broken you. You chose to stand against your own people for what was right. And now the choice spreads, they concluded together. Like ripples on water, touching shores we'll never see but forever changing them. The fire crackled in the silence that followed, the weight of destiny settling around them like a comfortable cloak. Outside, the integrated city slept peacefully, unaware that it was the birthplace of a new world, a new future, a new definition of what it meant to be people, not human, not Kyathi, but simply, beautifully, unified. I love you, Kalen said suddenly, the words encompassing all of them. His wife, his daughters, his son, the grandchildren sleeping in their homes, the city beyond, the future they had carved from impossibility. And we love you, Selah replied, speaking for them all. As the fire died to embers and the night grew deep, They sat together in comfortable silence, four souls who had found each other in the most unlikely way, and in doing so had changed the course of two civilizations. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The delegates would return with questions, with doubts, with resistance. There would be those who saw the integration as a threat to their power, their prejudices, their comfortable fears. There would be battles to fight, minds to change, hearts to open. But tonight, in this moment, there was only peace, the peace of a journey completed and a new one beginning. The peace of a family forged from loss and strengthened by choice. The peace of knowing that sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the simplest invitations. You need a home, and we need a bride for our father. Words spoken by children in the snow, carried on the wind of chance and choice, had become the foundation of a new world. And in that house built into stone, where human and Kathy had become family, where impossible had become inevitable, the future slept soundly in the arms of love.